Revenue growth is certainly the most head-spinning challenges faced today in any businesses by CFOs, CEOs, and CMOs. While every business desires to realize high revenue growth, but even the most successful companies experience slow growth at some point in their journey and are forced to reinvent themselves. The market keeps on constantly challenging to adapt and restructure strategies of growth and success. Rapidly changing consumer behaviors, advances in data and analytics, channel shifts, and higher expectations from investor firms have forced business leaders to strive for enhanced and more adaptive methods. There is a dire need to restructure and revamp business revenue strategies that are curating outdated and siloed tech processes and old school resources which add to the confusion in the current time. Our next session is to set the tone and to throw some light on it and guide us to solve this forever mystery. Please allow me to invite our speaker. As an innovative and award-winning marketing executive, she has over 18 years experience working in user experience design, financial analysis, strategic marketing, thought leadership, demand generation, and PR. With her proven experience in both high growth and established markets, she has served in executive leadership team roles responsible for the global marketing growth engine and worldwide brands, including growing a startup from $7 million to $15 million, which culminated in an exit to top 10 global IT leader, NTT Data in 2019. So with all these accolades, we are extremely excited and the pleasure as I invite our keynote speaker, Ms. Meghan Lockwood, please. Thank you so much, Meghan, for joining in. It's a pleasure.
Hi, thank you so much, Pooja. I'm so glad to be here. Hello to the NASCOM Summit, at least digitally. It's just such a thrill to be joining all of you to talk about some of my favorite marketing topics, innovation and growth. It's such a fascinating time, especially to be trying to market right now. And so I'm just thrilled to be here and share some thoughts. I think, the list of what you've used to do sounds pretty daunting, but I would tell you that marketing is a craft, and I'm thrilled to be sharing some of my thoughts with you today. And I'm going to bring up a deck. And so hopefully this will all work out seamlessly. Sorry, everyone. Oops. So thank you for bearing with me as this comes up, everyone. And so we're going to talk about innovative strategies, as Pooja said, for growth. And I wanted to start out giving you a little bit of a backdrop on why I get to be here talking to you all about innovation. And I've been really lucky in my career to be on some exceptional teams and grow a career with some of sort of the top marketing brands out there. And, I'm going to date myself a little bit by saying that I started out studying the psychology of why people say yes online at Marketing Sherpa. And then I joined the content team at HubSpot, which of course, all of you probably know, and many of you probably are certified in today. But once upon a time, we all sat in a room and we had a conversation, a debate about whether or not people would take this new emerging concept called content marketing and would they call it inbound? And so, surprised that they did, but that journey was such a fascinating experience in how to drive innovation and how to drive growth with significant revenue growth over time. And then, over the course of the last little bit, I've had some other great companies, including Acoria, where, as Pooja said, we exited about 18 months ago to NTT Data, which is a top 8 IT services and consulting firm across the globe, where I'm lucky enough to be the Vice President of Digital Transformation Marketing today. And, I'll note that I didn't stop at just where I've been and what the career trajectory that I've had over time is, because any conversation about marketing today inevitably has to encounter and discuss the world that we're in right now. Because I don't know if anybody else thinks this, but I have to tell you that the past 2 years have been the most challenging, the most complicated, the most fascinating in terms of how do we drive growth? How do we help people keep the wheels on the bus, move the needle for our collective organizations in a time when the ground is really changing underneath us? So I think I'm the luckiest person in the world because I get to share my craft. I get to help teams and businesses really drive organizations, drive business, grow careers, all of those different things. And, I said that this is one of the hardest times to market out there that I've ever experienced, but it's also one of the most exciting and one of the most fascinating to me, because if you understand about marketing, we're really trying to move people and drive action. We're trying to inspire people to change and to build relationships with us. Super, super hard to do that when everybody is exhausted or sick or over Zoom or some combination of all of the above. But as the digital footprint, as the face of a company, as a company's front door, there's no time that we've been more necessary. And so I'm really excited to talk about innovation. And rather than tell you all about innovation, I thought I might try and share what is innovation? How do we create an honest, an intimate, a human connection with our audience, and what makes us money? And so this is an example of something we did just about a year ago. So right around Valentine's Day, with the company that we exited called Ikorio, that was known for driving events. And a lot of, as everybody knows, all of a sudden, a lot of the biggest, it was the number 3 component of driving leads in our overall pipeline to sales was in-person events. Well, if everything goes digital, you can't do that anymore. So how did we think differently? What could we do to replicate that experience, to get people to move, to keep the momentum? And we had these big, significantly big growth goals because of our acquisition. And so what could we do as we took a global stage to move the needle? And so here's our one of our takes on pandemic events, which was to hire Matthew McConaughey, who was coming out at the time with his book, Green Lights, hire him to come and join us for an intimate conversation and a celebration of the new year. Because again, when you think about trying to drive human action and to do things differently and to connect with others when they're fatigued, we didn't want to talk about, oh my goodness, gloom and doom, the pandemic. We really wanted to celebrate what's aspirational, what's optimistic about what people are doing and how communities are coming together today. And so Matthew McConaughey's Greenlight book was one of those pieces that was coming out at the time that we really thought was relevant. And I will also say that to innovation and to that side of the world, you have to start to wear different hats then when you're thinking differently, when you're looking at different elements of the world. And so this is also an image of me making sort of a strange face as I interviewed Matthew McConaughey, because I had never done that before, certainly never interviewed celebrities, but we looked around and apparently it's a little bit awkward for an hour to have somebody just monologue at you. And those kind of conversations work better when there's a back and forth. And so you look to your left and you look to your right and you go, okay, I guess I'm elected to read everything that Matthew McConaughey has ever done. And so, but to me, those numbers, we made it a charitable event, but we got 1,000 people to join a Zoom call on a Thursday night, including over 200 of our most critical partners. And it just speaks to, if you think differently, if you turn the coin and try and identify what can we do that will create an experience, what would I go to? What do I think is cool? That's a great litmus test. And I'll show you some in the future about, in a little bit, about, am I doing thoughtful marketing? Am I moving the needle? And so here's a quote after that event from the Chief Innovation Officer of our largest partner, which really gives a significant, maybe 60% of our total sales growth. And so what I like about this is not just that somebody called us innovative, but I think not everyone is coming from an organization like NTT Data. Not everybody can hire a Matthew McConaughey. And so one of the pieces about this is, I really think how you think differently and how you can try to figure out what connection points you can create. You don't have to have a massive global brand. You don't have to throw oceans of money at something in order to drive a truly creative outcome. And so I wanted to share that at a different level. This doesn't have to be big things that are innovative. And I'm going to show a couple more examples over time, but this is a different company, Nexient, that is also one of NTT Data's sibling new recent acquisitions that we're also doing marketing for. This I got last week, actually. And the puzzle here that we were trying to solve was a much more intimate one. So we know that in the digital world, what we've lost a lot is that connection. And creating relationships, creating business relationships, especially in service where there's a component of trust. Relationships are tactile. There's a physicality to being able to shake someone's hand, to being able to sit across from someone in real life and have a glass of wine or have a cup of coffee with them. And so we were trying to figure out how could we replicate that in the real world and create something that was sent physically to our customers. And so this is a care package that we sent out for the New Year's Eve holiday. So very, very recent. And what I like about this is it's not just sending swag, right? It's sort of rare for somebody to get a package of something and send a picture back of them using it. But this isn't the only thing we did. We didn't just send a champagne flute with a logo on it. What we also did was send a card and a video with pictures of our executives, and they shared their plans for New Year's Eve at home, because certainly the Omicron variant was starting to spike again. And we thought, okay, what can we do to be a little bit funny and a little bit different? And so I think that, you know, that's, I hear in the background a little bit. So those are different examples of innovation. I hear a little bit about, we're talking about revenue too, right? And so there's that show me the money moment. I can't show actual numbers because of course NTT Data is a public company, but I did want to ground this in some concrete understanding and nuance of how we're driving revenue, how we're measuring what we do. And I think this is critically important. I'll talk about it a little bit later too. So we even this past year, in the last 18 months, have reimagined what kind of pipeline we needed. And so this is, if you understand pipeline, it's really how much in opportunities do we have that we have sight to that are qualified or that have a number attached to them in order that we think that hit our sales goals. And so if you asked me 3 years ago, I would say you needed about 3.3, 3.5 percentage of coverage. So 3 times the total dollar value that we're trying to close in 18 months in order to make sure that we were going to hit the number that, you know, as conservators, is people that are held accountable to selling business, to growing business, because of course, sales and marketing is completely connected in this digital space. What did we need to have in order to make that coverage? And so we actually accelerated that because people were getting nervous, because procurement timelines are extending in IT services. We now have about, which we're shooting for, about 4.5 coverage total for our pipeline. I think we're about 4.33 today, if I would answer. So the key is, it's not just thinking differently about, hey, what can we do to create something exciting and flashy in marketing, but it's also really considering, in our stewardship of our brand, in our stewardship of the digital footprint and the digital conversations that our companies are having, what can we do to ensure that we're meeting those numbers? And so I didn't want to just, I was thinking about it, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a framework about how to go and be innovative, how to drive revenue, because of course, it's sort of unfair to just say, go innovate. It's like telling somebody to go be funny or go write a book. They stare at a blank screen and then suddenly go, I don't know what to do. So I think about it in kind of, you know, we have a short amount of time together, 3 different pieces. And the first piece is, would you buy you? And that initially was going to be, you know, I was initially going to say, do you understand your customer? And do you know your audience? But I think in some ways, this flips it a little bit more to get at the heart, to get at the guttural of what I think drives innovation, what creates a different relationship with someone. The chief revenue officer at Nexient that I like a lot and admire, look up to, has this term that says, you know, for his sales organization, he trains them to say, are you client intimate? And so what I would say for audiences, for marketing, but even for executives, you know, anything in a business, are you audience intimate? Do you really understand what inspires, what triggers, what moves people, and what gets them excited to take an action? And that at the core part is what we're trying to do with innovation, right? And so that's getting harder. That breakthrough, that threshold is getting much harder and has significantly changed and moved over the past 18 months, 24 months or so, certainly when everybody has, amid a whole lot of other chaos that's going on in their lives. 5 or 6 years ago, I think there was some marketing slides that would talk about the attention gap. And if anybody remembers the goldfish swimming around that said that, human beings have a digital attention span about 6 or 7 seconds, that has decreased even more in the past 18 months, because now not only are they swimming around trying to be distracted by all the other emails that are out there, but they're homeschooling and somebody's sick and they're worried about the news and all those different pieces. So the threshold of what it takes to be innovative has changed. It's not just thinking about an email. And it may not even today, I have to tell you, I'm not sure after 24 months of Zoom calls, whether or not I would spend the money to hire a celebrity, or would I try and take that time and that attention and do more intimate events. I think the ABM Association is saying that those are working better right now. And so you have to understand your audience, and you have to capture what will inspire them to take an action in the universe that they're living in right now. So unfortunately, it means we have to be even more innovative to garner more attention. So when I try and communicate with my audience, I wanted to give you guys a quiz to check, are you being innovative right now in understanding your audience? The first question is, would I do this? If I'm thinking of a webinar, if I'm thinking up an email, would I read it? If, in sales organizations, one of my bosses says she steps away after an RFP and reads it again after an hour and says, would I buy this? So for us, for marketing in our craft, would I trade my time? Would I trade my email? Would I trade my personal information for the information that you're giving? And I think that litmus test really helps you decide whether or not you're generating and deriving value for your audience. And then it's not just, do I think this is cool? It's not just me personally. Would my best client think this is also cool? Would my best client also trade their time, their energy, their experience, their personal information for this? Because certainly many of us, the Holy Grail, right, is the Fortune 50, the chief innovation officer, the chief executive officer at one of the Fortune 50 companies. What they would get on a plane for, what they would trade an hour of their life for is different than what I would, or what somebody potentially, as a marketing associate would trade their time for. So think about your audience and really know intuitively, or try and test out to see what they respond to, what they care about. And then again, finally, on this innovation side, we're not innovating in a vacuum. So is it relevant to today? Is it relevant to business? I was thinking about this in that side of, all of the billionaires that are going to space. Well, that's maybe interesting for them, and it's certainly innovative. It's moving a boundary, but it's probably not doing a lot for Virgin Atlantic's bottom line. And it's certainly not, it may be doing something for Wall Street Journal, but when you're thinking about innovation, it's not just like, we're going to send somebody to the moon, or we're going to, throw confetti with our brand on it out into a parking lot. If that's not relevant to your business, then no one's going to buy it, and they're not going to make that intuitive connection. So for example, the Matthew McConaughey, which we showed, that was part of a content series called Expand. And what we were thinking about and sharing in a series of content over time with our clients was this idea that while our worlds and our inner lives have maybe shrunk because we've had to isolate and separate, the need to innovate, the need to inspire ourselves has actually expanded over the past year. And so when Matthew McConaughey wrote this book about green lights, about expanding your horizons and thinking differently, we really thought that that was a credible piece. So that's the first thing is, know who you are, know what's interesting, and try and drive and inspire true human connections with that. The other side, the next step of the three, is do what other people aren't. And so, I think that that's one of the next pieces is understanding not just what drives people, but what else is out there, what else is competing for attention. We just talked about that attention. So we get into I think there are three parts of this. So we get into this construct of what best practice is, but it's really hard to innovate. If we talk about best practice, that means that a lot of other people are doing it. And so it's hard to innovate from the back. And so, and I don't mean don't try and be exceptional, or don't try to follow rules. But I think sometimes best practice gets into this challenge of of pitching or trying to follow what other people have done. You know, a good example in email marketing, for example, is the entire world sends emails from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. from Tuesday to Thursday. So if you're doing that, yeah, sure, it's more likely to get an open rate. It's also more likely to compete with 10,000 other emails that are in somebody's inbox where they're trying to compete for attention. So when you think about best practices, instead, I try and think about great marketing being about curiosity and about doing something to beat yourself every single day. So that's the first part about what, you know, doing something differently is and trying to drive innovation. I also think that it's critically important to think bigger. So often we get stuck in these ruts of planning. We're going through the cycles, or maybe you've just finished, right? So we put a marketing budget together, we put a strategy together based on, well, we did webinars last year, we had these events, we have to support these partner activities. And so we do building blocks or Legos from the ground up. But I think that any kind of innovation has to be intentional, and you have to create the aperture for your organization and timeframes and budget and sections to think bigger. And so I would say, one, giving yourself inflection points. Like we ask my team every single week at the end of the week or at the beginning of our week, we look at numbers and then we ask ourselves, can we try anything else? Is there anything else out there? Are there cool TikTok videos? Are there any pieces that we can do that will change, will drive more looks, will drive more clicks? I think, you know, HubSpot was a really interesting place to be in a really interesting time because they took that top-down approach. They weren't asking themselves, what kind of campaign can I run to sell email marketing software? The question that we were asking in the room, the question that we were debating when we started to think about, will people buy inbound? Can we create a movement that will inspire people to be interested in a technology platform? And the questions we asked weren't, is this a good campaign? But what can we create that will get 60,000 people to read it? What can we do that will get 1 million people to click on our website? And so when you think like that, you get different answers to questions than what should I do? I think sometimes we get in this rote of, I need to do a webinar, I need to do this. And I don't even know if I'd go and see that or not. So everything you do, it's those pieces and their building blocks together is this something that I would exchange my time for? And is anybody else doing it? Because those places are probably the opportunities that you can to expand and to innovate. And then finally, you have to do something different all the time. You have to keep challenging yourself and pushing boundaries because people will get blind to the same thing over and over again. If you see a flashing light repeated, you're going to stop seeing that flashing light. And so, I joined HubSpot. I don't mean to keep quoting them all the time, but Dan Zarella, who sort of created Twitter marketing at one point, told me one time that really great marketing, it's like my second day, really great marketing is, you know, thinking about you're driving a car and the car is driving pretty well. Every 6 months, take the wheels off the car, put them on the roof and see if you can make it drive better. And I think, again, that thought process, that desire to change and to push yourself and to learn and be curious about what you can do and what your audience cares about, that's what drives innovation. And it doesn't have to be big. This is going to relatively quickly, you know, I think sometimes we think about innovation being these big splashes going to the moon. You can innovate, especially doing the little things. And in fact, frankly, I think sometimes innovating on the details is where almost all of the change and almost all of the meat really goes. So for example, subject line testing. Email is a fascinating strategy in marketing, right? Because your best day, the best email that you ever send at a mass scale, half the people, more than half, probably at least, you know, 60% of them will immediately delete and ignore everything that you're trying to say. So understanding that and trying to identify what in your email, what in a subject line can be different and doing the little things right. I think that's really cool innovation and a place that every single one of you can try tomorrow. So here, it's a very simple subject line test. This is not an innovative in and of itself campaign. It's not an innovative activity. We're trying to sell content strategy, right? But during that time, we were thoughtful and we started to test regionally what might make sense, what might get somebody to click on an email. And so here we have, it was in Atlanta. It was during a time when I'm going to say Julio Teheran wrong, but I think maybe I got it right actually. But it was at a time where he was really hot and the baseball playoffs were going on. And so we created a different subject line, a pitch better than the fastball. And you'll see that drove a whole different kind of open rate. And again, to me, sometimes you can get lost in clicks in the numbers, but at a high level, what we're trying to do is move enough people to action so that, the difference between 12%, which is kind of the norm for email open rate, maybe 15, and 43% is that many more people we have an opportunity to have and build a relationship with, to have a conversation with. So I think that's another example of how even the little things can be thoughtful, can be innovative. And so here are, to me, some best practices on how do you do something differently. And so I always say, can we say this more uniquely? Can we say this more creatively? Although I'll give you a caveat because I don't know all of you. And so one of my best mentors, Flint McLaughlin, who came from Marketing Sherpa and is brilliant, understands marketing maybe better than anyone in the world sometimes, I think, used to say that clarity trumps persuasion. So don't be creative for creativity's sake. Be creative in a way that's surfacing value. Be creative in a way that's explaining uniquely to your audience what they care about. And then I would ask, does this remind me of anything else I've seen? And if not, again, objectively look at your content. Is there anything else I can see that might make someone more likely to react, to change? Because that's what we're trying to do. And then finally, look at the numbers. And that's the biggest, if we're talking about innovation, but also making revenue, moving the needle, driving change, being the stewards of our businesses, it has to be grounded in numbers. And I sometimes think this is self-evident, but it's not always, because I think often marketers didn't necessarily get into marketing because they like math. I'm different. I come from finance, but I do think that difference sometimes gets missed, even by great marketers. We can even get caught in the clicks and the likes and that side. How is it tied to revenue? What is the decision maker? And what is the decision maker doing? Are we creating sales? And I think, that is what will change your career. And that's what helps you. It does a couple of things. It changes how the business perceives you. So it makes you a strategic partner to your business, because anytime you ask for something, you say, well, here's what I think is going to matter. Here's where I think the needle is going to move. And here's why. And I promise you, any innovation that you're going to do probably needs to be funded. It's very hard to innovate for free. And so you're going to have to ground something in expected return. And the best way to do that is based on, other than financial services, based on past performance. What do we see? What have we tested? What have we been curious about? And what has that resulted in? And I'll tell you that we even, look at it in different ways on my team. We started to do some other in-person events. We did a virtual music conference, and at first blush, it looked like that was almost as successful as some of the earlier expand events that we had done, except that it was actually just one or two big whales. And so we could get them we could get more conversations with them by doing more intimate, by doing smaller events that are closer with our executives, rather than doing a big reveal that costs a lot of money in a time when we're trying to conserve a little bit, because obviously business is a little bit challenging right now. And so to me, grounding these pieces in numbers, you're going to need an answer when you ask for investment on what you expect to get. And so I think that's one of those critical pieces. And so what I'm showing you is some numbers in a dashboard from a couple of years ago, again, because public numbers, but everything we do, every campaign, every email, every mail send is ultimately connected through our sales organization. And we have conversations about what drove the most opportunities, what drove the most closed sales, what closed the fastest. And then we understand what levers to pull right now in order to drive that revenue, to really be the stewards of our business. And so that's the questions that I would ask around, am I driving revenue? Am I innovating in the right direction, or am I just sending people to the moon? Am I making decisions based on what's making us money? And again, I think objectively, sometimes we get tied to the product and not the outcome. And I think by asking yourself all of the time, what could I do next time that would get even better result? If you ask yourself that every single time, you're going to move the needle. And so some final thoughts, because I don't have too much time. In marketing, if you're thinking about innovating, if you're thinking about what else can you do to drive a career and to really be a steward of a business today in this world that is so changing and is so complicated. I think it's be a student of what you do, be a student of your craft too. Read voraciously. There are brilliant marketers out there. People inspire me all the time. And so curate that craft, be a student of human behavior too. So curate your craft and then understand people, because at the end of the day, marketers are psychologists, but we're trying to create relationships digitally with brand, with activities. We're trying to create relationships with other people who want to create relationships with our business. And I take that super personally, honestly. And I think that, I know services is maybe like a 6-month close rate from lead to closed opportunity. And so the harder we work right now, people will be able to go on summer vacation. They'll be able to make plans. And so I think being a student of what will inspire people to act, what makes them change, allows you to make those great decisions. And, we're the first leg of a very complicated relay race that organizations go through to create long-term business relationships with our customers, with our clients. And so understanding who those clients are, understanding who those people are, is critically important to being able to get them to do anything, right? I always think, right, not in a vacuum. Who inspires you? So saying curate your craft and be a student of it. Pick out a board of inspiration. Do you like what Reformation is doing? Do you like what Remarkable is doing, or Toomey or Yeti? Or I still like The Onion, and I think MMA right now really intuitively gets their audience. So pick out a board of inspiration for you. What do you want your company to look like, or your brand? What kind of events do you think are cool? And then back out. Okay, how can I take that big thing and make it work for my company? I would say pick your battles. And what I mean, pick your battles, do it strategically based on where you think you'll get the biggest impact. And then for those battles you do go to bat for, be excellent at them. Really, really take it as far as you possibly can go. Ask other people outside, ask your mother if they would go and to this event. Get other opinions. Don't sit in your little silo and think about, how do we solve for this one challenge? Ask yourself if you can make it bigger, and then excel on those battles where you really want to go to fight for. And then this is the final thing. Every week I ask my team in the first Monday meeting, what else aren't we thinking about? What haven't we considered? What do we need to challenge ourselves with? And I promise you, if you do that every single day for the next 365 days, you'll be in a very different place next year at this time, and you will have learned more about your customers and more about your audience and more about probably yourself and your company too. And so that's it. Thank you all so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I hope in the meantime, you all have a wonderful week and stay safe and find inspiration out there. There's so much cool business challenges to solve, and we are all the ones at the front lines doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meghan. I think it was a very, very empowering presentation, I have to say this. Every slide was so well thought of and so well picked up. 3 key takeaways that I could take back, and I'm sure the audience will also agree to this, is one is that you highly spoke about this one word, which is all about marketing, and that is innovation. Mm-hmm. That innovation is not something about you have to travel to the moon. I really love the line, so I'm going to use it somewhere. It's not traveling to the moon. It's something that the smallest things that you do, sitting at one space and just like thinking that what makes this person find this very innovative. So that's one very important takeaway that I took from. The second is that ask yourself. Now this is very important. Asking yourself moment to moment on an everyday basis. Because if I ask myself, I ask my team. Because when I ask my team asks itself, and then that's how the chain reaction happens. So I think the second point was also very pertinent. And the third one was that you said that let's not get stressed with what is happening. Like you started your presentation mentioning that there's so much happening around. People are sick, people are struggling. But like you said, you're the luckiest person because you have such a grander opportunity to sort of reach out to people with your innovative ideas. And that is something that I could take back. So thank you very, very much. It's such a pleasure to host you, Meghan. Please take care, and we shall meet soon in the future. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you all very much, and good luck out there.